The whispering woods loomed ominously under the fading light of dusk. Trees stood tall and twisted, their branches reaching out like clawed hands. A thick mist settled among the trees, obscuring the path ahead and adding to the sense of foreboding. Deep within the woods, an abandoned cabin stood desolate. Its windows were boarded up, and its door hung off its hinges. Weathered wood and creeping vines adorned the exterior. Inside, darkness and mustiness filled the air, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling like ghostly veils. The living room of the cabin was sparse, with a dilapidated sofa and a dusty rug covering the floor. A broken window let in a chilling breeze, causing the faded photographs on the walls to flutter ominously. The kitchen was in disarray, with broken cabinets and scattered utensils. The sink was stained, and a thick layer of grime covered the countertops. A single flickering bulb cast long, eerie shadows that danced across the walls. The backyard of the cabin was overgrown with weeds, and old rusted gardening tools lay abandoned among the tangled foliage. A gnarled tree stood in the center, its branches reaching out like skeletal fingers against the moonlit sky, adding to the eerie atmosphere. The whispering woods at midnight were cloaked in darkness. The trees seemed to sway and whisper secrets to each other, their branches creaking in the stillness of the night. Strange, ghostly lights flickered among the shadows, adding to the sense of otherworldly dread. The bedroom was cold and drafty, with a creaky bed covered in moth-eaten sheets. Moonlight filtered through the cracks in the boarded-up window, casting eerie patterns on the floor and illuminating the room in a ghostly glow. The attic was filled with dusty, forgotten belongings. Old trunks sat in the corners, their contents long forgotten. Cobwebs hung from the rafters, and the air was heavy with the scent of decay, as if the very walls were whispering tales of the past. As dawn broke, the whispering woods were bathed in the soft light of morning. The mist began to dissipate, revealing the twisted trees and tangled underbrush. Birds chirped in the distance, bringing a sense of calm to the once eerie forest, as if the night's terrors had never existed. On a stormy night, four friends, Emma, Jake, Sophie, and Liam, arrive at Ravenswood Manor, an abandoned house said to be haunted. The wind howls and lightning illuminates the decaying facade. Jake, the adventurous one, suggests they spend the night there. Despite their fear, they all agree and push open the rusted gate. The front door creaks loudly as they step inside. The foyer is dark and smells of mold. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling, and broken furniture lies scattered around. Their flashlights reveal faded portraits on the walls, eyes seemingly following them. The door slams shut behind them, making them jump. They enter the living room, where a grand piano sits covered in dust. The wallpaper is peeling, and the room is filled with antique furniture draped in white sheets. Emma notices a music box on the mantel. She opens it, and it starts playing a haunting melody. Suddenly, a cold breeze brushes past them, and the room feels alive. A shadow moves across the room, and Sophie screams. They shine their flashlights in the direction of the movement, but see nothing. Jake insists it was just a trick of the light, but the others aren't so sure. They decide to stick together as they continue exploring. In the kitchen, they find rusted appliances and broken dishes. The air is colder here, and the feeling of being watched intensifies. Liam opens a cupboard, and a pair of ghostly eyes stare back at him. He yells and slams the door shut, his heart racing. They find a door leading to the basement. Jake suggests they go down, but Emma hesitates. The others convince her, and they descend the creaky wooden stairs. The basement is pitch dark and damp. Their flashlights reveal old, dusty furniture and strange markings on the walls. In the basement, they find an old table with a Ouija board on it. Suddenly, the planchette moves on its own, spelling out, "Leave now." A low growl echoes through the room, and they see red eyes staring at them from the darkness. Panicked, they rush back up the stairs. They race towards the front door, but it won't budge. Ghostly wails echo through the house, and the walls seem to close in on them. Jake finds a side window and breaks it with a chair. One by one, they crawl through, escaping into the stormy night. The house falls silent behind them. Outside, they collapse onto the wet grass, gasping for breath. The manor looms dark and silent behind them. They vow never to return, each one haunted by the night's events. The storm begins to calm, but the memory of what they saw remains vivid. Back at their homes, they try to return to normal life, but each night they are haunted by nightmares of the ghostly eyes and the whispers in the dark. The memories of that night stay with them, a reminder that some places are better left undisturbed.
In the heart of a dense forest stands an abandoned manor, its crumbling facade veiled in mist. Four friends, Sarah, Mark, Emily, and Chris, venture into the woods one foggy evening, drawn by tales of the manor's dark history. As they approach, the mist thickens, obscuring the path ahead. With trepidation, the friends push open the creaking front door and step into the foyer of the manor. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling, and dust motes dance in the dim light. The air is heavy with a sense of foreboding as they explore further, the floorboards groaning beneath their feet. Inside the manor, they encounter long, twisting hallways lined with closed doors. Each room they enter is filled with dusty furniture and forgotten belongings. Strange symbols are etched into the walls, and a chill wind whispers through the corridors, sending shivers down their spines. As they delve deeper into the manor, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to echo through the halls. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an eerie chorus. The friends exchange nervous glances, their hearts pounding in their chests as they try to locate the source of the haunting sounds. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize before them, translucent apparitions with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. Their ethereal forms glide through the air, their movements slow and deliberate. The friends watch in horror as the spirits drift closer, their presence filling the manor with a chilling cold. With adrenaline driving them, the friends turn and flee from the manor, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the dark corridors, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly spirits follow, their unearthly wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the manor, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They collapse on the grass outside, their bodies shaking with adrenaline and fear. As the first light of dawn breaks through the mist, they share a silent vow never to return to the haunted manor in the woods.
In a secluded forest, shrouded in mist, lies an ancient mansion rumored to be haunted. A group of friends, Emma, Mark, and Sarah, venture into the forest one chilly evening, drawn by the allure of the mansion's dark history. As they approach the mansion, they are greeted by an imposing wrought iron gate, its hinges creaking ominously in the chilly night air. The mansion looms before them, its grandeur faded and its windows like empty eyes staring out into the darkness. Inside the mansion, the air is thick with dust and the sound of creaking floorboards echoes through the empty halls. The friends explore room after room, their footsteps muffled by faded carpets and their voices swallowed by the oppressive silence. As they delve deeper into the mansion, they uncover signs of its dark past. Forgotten rooms filled with cobweb-covered furniture, secret passages hidden behind crumbling walls, and faded portraits of long-dead residents whose eyes seem to follow their every move. As night falls and shadows deepen, the mansion comes alive with strange noises and eerie whispers. The friends feel a presence lurking in the darkness, unseen but unmistakably malevolent, its icy fingers brushing against their skin like the chill of a grave. In a desperate bid to escape the mansion's grasp, the friends race through its labyrinthine halls, their hearts pounding and their breath coming in ragged gasps. But the mansion seems to have other plans, its corridors shifting and changing before their eyes, trapping them in a nightmarish maze from which there may be no escape. Cornered in the mansion's dark heart, the friends confront the malevolent force that has plagued them since their arrival. With a final desperate act of defiance, they banish the entity back into the shadows from whence it came, freeing themselves from its grasp and escaping into the night.
A group of friends, Sam, Lily, Ben, and Emma, arrive at Willow Lake, a secluded campground nestled deep in the woods. The air is thick with anticipation as they unpack their gear and set up camp beside the tranquil waters. The sun sets in the distance, casting an orange glow over the towering trees that surround them. As night falls, the friends gather around a crackling campfire, their faces illuminated by the dancing flames. They share spooky stories of ghosts and ghouls, their laughter echoing through the silent forest. But as the tales grow darker, a sense of unease settles over the group. and they can't shake the feeling that they are being watched. As they settle into their tents for the night, strange noises echo through the woods, creaking branches, rustling leaves, and eerie whispers that seem to float on the breeze. The friends huddle together, their hearts pounding with fear as they try to rationalize the unexplained phenomena. But deep down, they know that something sinister lurks in the darkness. Unable to shake their fear, the friends decide to investigate the source of the strange noises. Armed with flashlights, they venture into the dark woods, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of pine needles beneath their feet. The air is heavy with anticipation as they follow the trail deeper into the forest, their hearts pounding with each step. Eventually, they stumble upon a clearing in the woods, where an ancient oak tree stands sentinel in the moonlight. Strange symbols are etched into its bark, and a sense of malevolence hangs heavy in the air. As they approach, they are overcome by a wave of dread, knowing that they have stumbled upon something beyond their understanding. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize before them, translucent apparitions with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. The spirits drift through the clearing, their movements graceful yet unsettling. The friends watch in horror as the ghosts draw closer, their presence filling the night with a chilling aura. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends turn and flee from the haunted clearing, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the darkened woods, their footsteps echoing off the trees as they struggle to escape the malevolent spirits that pursue them. Branches claw at their skin, and roots trip them up as they push themselves to their limits. The abandoned Ravenswood Asylum stood on a hill, shrouded in fog and mystery. Jessica, a paranormal investigator, arrived at dusk, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. She parked her car and gazed at the looming building, its windows dark and empty like soulless eyes. Jessica pushed open the heavy front door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the asylum was dark and cold. She turned on her flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. The walls were lined with peeling paint and graffiti, and the floor was littered with debris. Her footsteps echoed eerily as she ventured deeper. As Jessica explored the main hallway, she felt a sudden chill. She turned to see a ghostly figure of a nurse standing at the end of the corridor. The nurse's face was pale and expressionless, and she slowly raised a finger to her lips as if to shush Jessica. Then she vanished into thin air. Jessica entered a room that appeared to have been a common area. Old, broken furniture was scattered around, and the walls were covered with faded, eerie drawings. As she examined the drawings, she heard faint whispers. She turned to see shadowy figures moving along the walls, their eyes glowing faintly. In the corner of the room, Jessica found an old journal. She opened it and read about the asylum's dark history, experiments on patients, mysterious deaths, and cover-ups. The journal mentioned a hidden basement where the worst atrocities occurred. Determined, Jessica set out to find it. Jessica found a hidden door behind a bookshelf, leading to a staircase that descended into darkness. She took a deep breath and started down the steps. The basement was cold and damp, with rusty equipment and old stained medical tools scattered around. The air was thick with the smell of decay. In the basement, Jessica saw the spirits of the patients. They were trapped, reliving their torment. A particularly sorrowful spirit, a young woman named Alice, revealed that the asylum's director had performed cruel experiments on them. The spirits begged Jessica to help them find peace. Jessica found a hidden chamber where the director's spirit lingered, still obsessed with his experiments. She confronted him, demanding he release the tortured souls. The director's spirit raged, but the power of the trapped souls combined with Jessica's determination forced him to vanish into the ether. With the director's spirit gone, the asylum began to crumble. Jessica hurried out, watching from a safe distance as the building collapsed. The spirits were finally free, and a sense of peace settled over the area. As the sun rose, the fog lifted, revealing a bright new day. Clara arrived at Ashwood House, an eerie, dilapidated mansion she had inherited from her aunt. The mansion stood on a hill, surrounded by dense, dark woods. The air was thick with fog, and the only sound was the distant hooting of an owl. As Clara walked up the creaky wooden steps, the front door slowly swung open on its own. Clara stepped inside, her footsteps echoing in the vast, empty hallway. Dust covered the floors, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. The walls were lined with faded portraits of stern-faced ancestors. She felt a sudden chill as she closed the door behind her, the silence inside the mansion almost deafening. Clara moved into the living room, where old, tattered furniture was draped in white sheets. An antique piano sat in one corner, its keys yellowed with age. As she walked past, she heard a single note play, sending shivers down her spine. She turned quickly, but no one was there. In the dining room, Clara found a large portrait of her Aunt Margaret above the fireplace. The eyes in the portrait seemed to follow her every move. As she stared at the painting, she heard faint whispering, as if someone was trying to communicate with her. She felt a cold breeze brush past her. In the library, Clara discovered an old, leather-bound diary hidden behind a row of books. The diary belonged to her aunt and detailed strange occurrences and eerie experiences in the house. As she read, the room grew colder, and she felt as if someone was watching her. Behind a bookshelf, Clara found a hidden door leading to a narrow, spiral staircase. She hesitated, but felt compelled to explore. Holding her flashlight, she descended the stairs, each step echoing in the darkness. The air grew colder and more oppressive with every step. The basement was damp and filled with old, dusty furniture covered in sheets. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls. In the center of the room stood an old wooden table with a black candle, which suddenly lit itself. Clara felt a sense of dread as she approached the table. Clara's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand on her shoulder. She spun around to see a ghostly figure of her Aunt Margaret, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Leave this place," the ghostly figure whispered. Panic-stricken, Clara ran up the stairs, the house seeming to come alive with doors slamming and shadows moving. She burst through the front door into the night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop running until she reached her car, vowing never to return to Ashwood House. Breathing heavily, Clara glanced back at the mansion as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure of her Aunt Margaret watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, never looking back.
On a cold, windy night, 4 friends, John, Sarah, Mike, and Emily, arrive at an old abandoned house at the edge of town. They are curious about the rumors that the house is haunted and decide to explore. They push open the creaky front door and step inside. The air is cold and musty, the wooden floorboards creak under their feet, and they use their flashlights to see. In the living room, they find an old tattered couch and a dusty coffee table. On the wall, there is a large cracked mirror. Suddenly, they hear a whispering sound, but no one is there. They decide to explore upstairs. The staircase creaks loudly as they climb. The hallway is long and dark, with several closed doors. A cold breeze seems to come from nowhere, making them shiver. They open one of the doors and find a room with old children's toys scattered on the floor. The air is even colder here. Suddenly, a toy car moves on its own, and they hear a child's laughter. Frightened, they rush downstairs and find a door leading to the basement. They open it and descend into the darkness. The basement is damp and cold, with a feeling of dread in the air. In the basement, they find an old trunk. When they open it, a ghostly figure of a woman appears, her face twisted in sadness. She reaches out towards them, and they feel an icy chill. Terrified, they run up the stairs and out of the house. The door slams shut behind them, and they can still hear the whispers and laughter. They vow never to return. In the heart of Blackwood Forest, a group of friends, Jack, Sarah, Luke, and Emma, embarks on a dare to explore the Forbidden Woods. As they enter the forest, tall trees cast long shadows, and a sense of foreboding hangs in the air. Pushing deeper into the forest, they follow a winding path that seems to disappear into the shadows. The air grows cooler, and strange noises echo through the trees. Despite their growing unease, they press on, driven by curiosity and adrenaline. Suddenly, they stumble upon a moonlit clearing, the ground littered with decaying leaves and gnarled roots. In the center stands an ancient, dilapidated cabin, its windows shattered and its doors hanging off their hinges. The air is heavy with the stench of decay. With trepidation, they approach the cabin and cautiously step inside. The interior is shrouded in darkness, the only light coming from their flickering flashlights. Cobwebs cling to the walls and the floorboards creak ominously beneath their feet. As they explore further, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to emanate from the walls themselves. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the cabin with an otherworldly chorus that sends shivers down their spines. Suddenly, a dark shadow materializes before them, its form shifting and twisting in the dim light. It looms over them, its eyes glowing with malevolence as it reaches out with ghostly hands. Frozen with fear, they realize they have awakened something ancient and sinister. With a collective scream, the friends flee from the cabin, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the forest, the shadows closing in around them as they run. Behind them, they can hear the echoing laughter of the darkness that lurks within Blackwood Forest. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from Blackwood Forest, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They vow never to return to the haunted woods, haunted by the shadows that lurk within its depths.
Evelyn, Mark, Lisa, and John arrived at Crescent Grove, a forgotten village nestled deep in the forest. The sun was setting, casting eerie shadows on the abandoned buildings. The village was said to be haunted, and the four friends had come to investigate the rumors. "This place gives me the creeps," Lisa whispered, clutching Mark's arm. "Don't worry, it's just for one night," Mark reassured her. Evelyn led the group, her curiosity piqued by the mystery. "Let's find a place to set up camp." John the skeptic laughed. "Ghosts aren't real, you'll see." They found an old inn at the center of the village and decided to make it their base for the night. The building was dusty and filled with cobwebs. As they set up their sleeping bags in the main hall, strange noises echoed through the empty corridors. "Did you hear that?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling. "It's just the wind," John replied, though he didn't sound convinced. Evelyn found an old diary on a shelf. "This might tell us what happened here," she said, opening it. As Evelyn read from the diary, the friends learned about the village's dark past. The villagers had practiced forbidden rituals, summoning a malevolent spirit that eventually destroyed them. "This is creepy," Mark said, glancing around nervously. "We should leave," Lisa urged, fear in her eyes. "We need to stay and finish this," Evelyn insisted. "We have to find out if the spirit is still here." Suddenly the air grew cold and the lights flickered. A shadowy figure appeared at the end of the hall, its eyes glowing with a sinister red light. The friends froze in terror. "Run!" Mark shouted, but the figure moved faster, blocking their exit. Evelyn held up the diary like a shield. "We need to use the ritual described here to banish it." The spirit lashed out, knocking John to the ground. Lisa screamed and Mark pulled her back, trying to protect her. With trembling hands, Evelyn and Mark gathered the materials needed for the ritual described in the diary. Lisa and John tried to hold the spirit at bay, their fear palpable. "Hurry up!" Lisa cried as the spirit advanced. "We're almost ready," Evelyn said, her voice shaking. "Mark, light the candles." Mark lit the candles, forming a protective circle. Evelyn began to chant the incantation from the diary, her voice growing stronger with each word. The spirit roared in fury, trying to break through the protective circle. Evelyn continued to chant, her voice now steady and commanding. The air crackled with energy as the spirit's form began to waver. "Keep going," Mark urged, holding Lisa close. John, recovering from the spirit's attack, joined in the chant. The spirit let out a deafening scream as it was forced back. With one final word, Evelyn completed the ritual. The spirit dissolved into the air, leaving a deafening silence behind. The friends collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a peaceful silence. "We did it," Evelyn said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's get out of here," Lisa urged, her eyes still wide with fear. They gathered their things and left the inn, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. As they walked away from Crescent Grove, they felt a sense of triumph and relief. "Let's never do this again," John said, managing a weak smile. As they walked away from the village, the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the forest. The village behind them was now just a distant memory, a place they would never forget but never return to. "Let's make a pact," Evelyn said, stopping to look at her friends. "We never speak of this again." "Agreed," Mark, Lisa, and John said in unison. They walked on, the past behind them and the future ahead, grateful to have survived the haunting of Crescent Grove. Sarah and her husband, David, arrive at Silverwood Manor, an old estate they inherited from Sarah's distant relative. The house is imposing, with tall windows and ivy-covered walls. As they unpack, Sarah finds an old, dusty music box in the attic. Intrigued, she decides to keep it. That night, Sarah is awakened by the soft melody of the music box playing on its own. She also hears faint whispers and footsteps. Frightened, she wakes David, but the sounds stop as soon as he is awake. They both dismiss it as the house settling. The next day, Sarah and David find an old journal hidden in a secret compartment of the music box. It belonged to a girl named Eliza who lived in the house a century ago. The journal entries describe Eliza's fear of a dark presence in the house. That night, the whispers and footsteps return, louder and more menacing. Sarah sees a shadowy figure at the foot of her bed. The figure reaches out to her, and she screams, waking David. The figure vanishes, but the air remains cold and heavy. Desperate for answers, Sarah and David contact a local historian. The historian tells them about Eliza's tragic story. She was believed to have been haunted by a malevolent spirit and disappeared mysteriously. Her body was never found. Following the historian's advice, Sarah and David search the basement and find a hidden door behind some old crates. Inside, they discover a small room with old furniture and a large cracked mirror. The room is freezing, and they feel a strong, oppressive presence. Sarah looks into the mirror and sees Eliza's ghost. Eliza silently pleads for help, showing Sarah visions of her past and how the malevolent spirit trapped her in the hidden room. Eliza points to a spot on the floor where her remains are buried. Sarah and David dig at the spot Eliza indicated and find her remains. They perform a simple ritual to lay her spirit to rest. As they finish, Eliza's ghost appears one last time, smiling gratefully before fading away. The air becomes warm and peaceful. With Eliza's spirit at rest, Silverwood Manor feels lighter and more welcoming. The whispers and footsteps stop. Sarah and David decide to stay and restore the manor, feeling a deep connection to its history and to Eliza.
It was a dark, stormy night. 4 friends, Tom, Lisa, Mark, and Anna, stood outside an old, abandoned manor on the outskirts of town. They had heard stories about the place being haunted and decided to explore it for themselves. With a mix of excitement and fear, they pushed open the heavy, creaking door and stepped inside. The interior was dark and dusty, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. The air was thick and musty. They walked into what seemed to be the living room. An old chandelier hung from the ceiling, and a grand piano sat in one corner, its keys covered in dust. Suddenly, the piano played a single haunting note, and the friends froze in fear. Deciding to explore further, they moved into the library. Shelves filled with old, decaying books lined the walls. Lisa picked up a book, and as she opened it, a cold breeze blew through the room and the candles flickered. They found a door leading to the basement. Hesitant but curious, they decided to go down. The stairs creaked with every step, and the air grew colder as they descended. The basement was dark and damp. In the basement, they discovered old furniture and strange markings on the walls. Suddenly, they heard whispering voices all around them. Mark shined his flashlight towards a corner, revealing a ghostly figure standing there, watching them. Panicked, they ran back up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and windows rattling. They finally burst out of the front door, breathing heavily and vowing never to return. Back at their homes, they gathered together, still shaken by the experience. They knew they had encountered something truly supernatural and agreed to never speak of it again.
In a remote forest clearing stands an old, dilapidated cabin, its windows boarded up and its door barely hanging on its hinges. 4 friends, Tom, Sarah, Mike, and Emily, arrive at the cabin for a weekend getaway. The sun is setting, casting long shadows over the eerie landscape. Inside the cabin, the air is thick with dust and decay. Cobwebs hang from the rafters, and the floorboards creak ominously underfoot. The friends explore cautiously, their footsteps echoing off the walls as they navigate the dimly lit rooms. As they search the cabin, they discover a trap door leading to a dark, musty basement. With trepidation, they descend into the depths below, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The air grows colder, and the sound of dripping water echoes off the stone walls. In the basement, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to echo off the stone walls. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an eerie chorus. The friends exchange nervous glances, their hearts pounding as they try to locate the source of the haunting sounds. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize before them, translucent apparitions with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. The ethereal beings glide through the darkness, their movements graceful yet unsettling. The friends watch in horror as the spirits draw closer, their presence filling the basement with a chilling aura. With adrenaline driving them, the friends turn and flee from the basement, their hearts pounding with terror. They scramble up the stairs, their footsteps echoing off the walls as they race for the safety of the cabin above. Behind them, the ghostly spirits follow, their unearthly wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape. Exhausted and trembling, the friends burst through the door of the cabin, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They collapse on the floor, their bodies shaking with adrenaline and fear. Outside, the moon casts an eerie glow over the forest, as if mourning the events that have unfolded.
In the heart of a dense forest stood an old, forgotten asylum. It had been abandoned for decades, its history buried under layers of dust and overgrown vines. The locals believed it was cursed, and no one dared to go near it. However, a group of 4 friends, Jake, Lisa, Ben, and Sarah, decided to explore it after hearing the eerie tales. "Are we really doing this, Midato Selwyn?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "Of course," Jake replied, leading the way. "It's just an old building." As they approached the asylum, the air grew colder, and an unsettling silence surrounded them. Inside, the asylum was even more ominous. The walls were lined with peeling paint, and the floor was covered in debris. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. "This place gives me the creeps," Ben said, his flashlight illuminating the dark corridors. "Just stick together," Jake said, trying to sound brave. "We'll be fine." As they moved deeper into the asylum, they heard faint whispers and distant footsteps, though they were the only ones there. Or so they thought. While exploring a particularly dark hallway, Lisa suddenly screamed. "Did you see that?" She pointed towards a shadowy figure that disappeared around the corner. "What did you see?" Jake asked, rushing to her side. "A person, or something that looked like one," Lisa replied, shaking. "Let's check it out," Ben suggested, though his voice was shaky. They cautiously followed, but the figure was gone. Instead, they found an old, rusted wheelchair with fresh scratch marks on the floor. In one of the rooms, they found old patient records and disturbing photos. The files detailed horrific experiments conducted on the patients. "This is sick," Sarah said, flipping through the documents. "No wonder this place is abandoned." Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them. The friends rushed to open it, but it was stuck. The room grew colder, and they heard a low, guttural growl. "We need to get out of here," Jake said, panic setting in. They managed to pry the door open and fled down the corridor. The whispers grew louder, and they could feel a presence following them. Sarah looked back and saw shadowy figures closing in. "Run!" she screamed. They raced through the maze-like hallways, trying to find an exit. The spirits of the asylum's past residents seemed to be everywhere, their wails echoing through the walls. "We're not alone," Ben panted, fear evident in his voice. The group stumbled upon a chapel within the asylum, its stained glass windows cracked but still intact. The room had an eerie calmness, and the spirits seemed to avoid it. "Maybe we can hide here," Lisa suggested, her voice trembling. They barricaded the doors and huddled together, trying to catch their breath. As they sat in the dim light of their flashlights, they noticed a hidden door behind the altar. "Should we check it out?" Jake asked. "We don't have a choice," Ben replied. They opened the hidden door and found a narrow staircase leading down to a secret basement. The air grew colder as they descended. The basement was filled with old medical equipment and cages. "This must be where they conducted their experiments," Sarah whispered. As they explored, they found a large, iron-bound book, filled with incantations and rituals. The book seemed to pulse with a dark energy. "We need to destroy this," Jake said. "It might be the source of the curse." With the book in hand, they returned to the chapel. They decided to perform a ritual to break the curse. As they began chanting from the book, the spirits became more aggressive, banging on the doors and windows. "Keep going," Alex shouted. The room shook, and the spirits' wails grew louder. Just as it seemed the spirits would break through, a blinding light filled the chapel, and the spirits screamed one final time before vanishing. "It's over," Emily whispered, dropping the book. The spirits gone, the friends made their way out of the asylum. The building seemed less menacing now, the air lighter. "We made it," Lisa said, relief evident in her voice. As they reached the forest edge, they turned back to see the asylum one last time. It stood silently, as if the horrors within had finally been laid to rest. "We should go," Ben said, "and never speak of this place again." Back in town, life slowly returned to normal. The friends promised each other to never speak of the asylum again. However, the memories of that night lingered. A few weeks later, Sarah received a package. Inside was another iron-bound book, similar to the one they had destroyed. Attached was a note, "For your collection." Her heart raced as she realized the curse might not be broken after all. On a foggy night, 4 friends, Jack, Mia, Ethan, and Sophie, arrived at Blackwood Manor. The old abandoned mansion was said to be cursed. They had come to investigate the legend. They pushed it open the heavy front door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the air was cold and stale. Dust covered every surface and cobwebs hung in the corners. The living room was filled with old furniture covered in white sheets. An antique chandelier hung from the ceiling, and a grand piano stood in the corner. Suddenly, the piano played a single, eerie note, causing everyone to jump. They moved to the library, where shelves of dusty books lined the walls. Jack picked up an old book, and as he opened it, a cold breeze swept through the room, making the candles flicker. They entered a long hallway filled with old portraits. The eyes of the portraits seemed to follow them as they walked. Mia shivered, feeling a chill run down her spine. At the end of the hallway, they found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to go down. The wooden stairs creaked under their weight, and the air grew colder with each step. The basement was cold and damp. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls. In the corner, they saw a ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. She reached out to them, and they felt an icy chill. Terrified, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return. Back at their homes, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and decided never to speak of it again. The old house stood at the end of the lonely street, its windows shattered and its wooden walls weathered by time. Sarah had heard stories about the house since she was a child. It was said to be haunted, a place where shadows whispered secrets and the air was thick with dread. Determined to prove it was all just a myth, she decided to spend the night there. As Sarah pushed open the creaking door, the musty smell of decay hit her. The interior was dark, with only the faintest light filtering through the grimy windows. She stepped inside, the floorboards groaning under her weight. Every corner seemed to be alive with whispers, just out of reach. Sarah moved cautiously into the living room. The furniture was covered in dust and cobwebs draped from the ceiling. An old grandfather clock stood against the wall, its hands frozen at midnight. As she looked around, she heard a faint whispering, like someone speaking from the shadows. On the wall hung a portrait of a stern-looking man. His eyes seemed to follow Sarah as she moved. She felt a chill run down her spine. The whispers grew louder, and for a moment she thought she saw the man's eyes blink. She stepped back in fear, her heart racing. Sarah found herself drawn to a door partially hidden behind a tattered curtain. She hesitated before pulling it open, revealing a set of stairs leading down into the darkness. The whispers were clearer now, urging her to descend. With trembling hands, she held her flashlight and began her descent. The basement was cold and damp, the walls lined with old shelves holding dusty jars and forgotten relics. The whispers were louder here, almost tangible. Sarah felt a presence behind her and spun around but saw nothing. Suddenly, an old radio crackled to life, playing a haunting lullaby. Sarah's flashlight flickered and died. In the darkness, she felt something brush against her arm. She backed away, stumbling over an old trunk. The whispers were deafening now. She managed to open the trunk, revealing an old diary. The pages told the story of a man who had lost his family and descended into madness, cursing the house and anyone who entered. Realizing the danger, Sarah grabbed the diary and rushed up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, the whispers turning into screams. Doors slammed shut around her, and the air grew colder. She reached the front door and burst out into the night, the whispers fading behind her. Outside, Sarah collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. She looked back at the house, now silent and still. She knew she could never explain what happened, but she had the diary as proof. As she walked away, she heard one last whisper in the wind, promising that the shadows would always be watching.
Briarwood Manor stood silent and foreboding at the end of a long, winding road. Jane, a young historian, arrived just as the sun was setting. She had heard stories about the mansion's dark past and was determined to uncover the truth. As she approached the front door, the wind howled and the trees whispered ominously. Jane pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. The interior was dark and filled with the smell of dust and decay. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but dilapidated foyer. The once beautiful chandeliers hung broken, and the walls were lined with tattered wallpaper. In the main hallway, Jane's flashlight beam fell on a large portrait of a stern-looking man. The eyes seemed to follow her as she moved. She felt a shiver run down her spine. Suddenly, a cold breeze blew through the hallway, and the portrait's expression changed to one of anger. Jane discovered a hidden door behind a bookshelf in the library. She pushed it open to find a small, secret room. The room was filled with old, dusty books and strange artifacts. In the center of the room was a table with a large, leather-bound journal. She opened it and began to read. The journal belonged to William Briarwood, the original owner of the manor. It detailed dark rituals and a pact with a malevolent spirit to gain wealth and power. The final entry mentioned a curse that would doom anyone who lived in the house. Jane realized the manor was haunted by the spirits of those sacrificed in the rituals. As Jane read the journal, she heard whispers around her. Ghostly figures of the sacrificed appeared, their faces twisted in agony. They warned her to leave before it was too late. The temperature in the room dropped, and Jane could see her breath. She knew she had to get out. Rushing to leave, Jane encountered the malevolent spirit of William Briarwood himself. He appeared at the top of the grand staircase, his eyes glowing with an evil light. He blocked her path, his voice echoing through the manor, threatening her for disturbing his peace. Jane ran through the dark hallways, the spirit close behind her. She burst through the front door and into the night. The manor seemed to sigh as she left, the wind howling around her. She didn't stop running until she reached her car. As she drove away, she could still feel the spirit's eyes on her. Safe in her apartment, Jane reviewed the footage she had captured. The images of the spirits and the journal entries were clear evidence of the haunting. She knew she had to share the story, but a part of her feared the curse might follow her. She felt a cold draft and shivered, wondering if she was truly safe.
A group of friends, Alex, Maya, Ben, and Emma, arrive at the secluded Willow Lake for a weekend camping trip. The sun dips below the horizon as they set up their tents on the shore, the water reflecting the fading light. Excitement fills the air as they gather around a crackling campfire, swapping stories and laughter. As night falls, a thick fog rolls in from the lake, shrouding the campsite in an eerie haze. The friends exchange uneasy glances as the temperature drops, the crackling of the campfire the only sound breaking the silence. Shadows dance in the mist and strange shapes move just beyond the edge of their vision. As the night wears on, the friends begin to notice strange occurrences around the campsite. Personal belongings go missing, only to reappear in odd places moments later. The tent flaps flutter open and shut of their own accord, and eerie whispers float on the breeze. Tension mounts as they realize they are not alone in the darkness. Suddenly, a figure materializes out of the fog, a spectral apparition with hollow eyes and a gaping mouth. The friends recoil in horror as it reaches out towards them, its form shifting and wavering in the mist. Frozen with fear, they watch as it drifts closer, its unearthly wails echoing in the night. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends scramble to pack up their belongings and flee from the campsite. They raced through the fog-shrouded forest, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the darkness. Branches claw at their skin, and roots trip them up as they push themselves to their limits, desperate to escape the grasp of the malevolent spirit. Exhausted and out of breath, the friends finally emerge from the forest and into the safety of the open meadow. They collapse on the grass, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and fear. As they catch their breath, they exchange relieved glances, grateful to have survived the night. But as they look back at Willow Lake, they can't shake the feeling that they have awakened something ancient and malevolent that will continue to haunt the wilderness for years to come. Grimsby Manor had a dark history that intrigued many, but only a few dared to explore its secrets. On a foggy autumn evening, Sarah, a young journalist with a passion for the paranormal, arrived at the mansion. She parked her car at the rusty gates, feeling a chill run down her spine. The mansion stood ominously in the distance, its windows like dark, watchful eyes. Sarah pushed open the creaking door of Grimsby Manor. Inside, the air was cold and musty. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but decaying foyer. Dust and cobwebs covered every surface, and old furniture lay shrouded in white sheets. Her footsteps echoed through the vast, empty space as she ventured further inside. As Sarah explored the mansion, she felt a sudden chill. Turning around, she saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. The figure disappeared as quickly as it appeared, leaving her heart pounding. Determined to uncover more, she made her way to the library, hoping to find records of the mansion's dark past. In the library, Sarah found rows of dusty old books. As she searched through them, she heard faint whispers and the sound of pages turning on their own. She discovered an old diary belonging to the mansion's original owner, Lord Grimsby. The entry spoke of dark rituals and a curse that had been placed on the house and its inhabitants. Sarah's exploration led her to a room filled with mirrors. As she walked through, her reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following her with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular caught her attention. In it, she saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. Sarah reached out to touch the mirror, but the image vanished. Sarah discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. She descended the creaky stairs into a dark, musty basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls and old, dusty books scattered on a table. She found a journal detailing the dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by Lord Grimsby. As Sarah read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Lord Grimsby appeared, his face twisted with rage. He pointed at Sarah and screamed, "You should not have come here!" The walls shook and the air filled with a chilling wind. Sarah knew she had to leave immediately. Sarah bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind her. She raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on her. She burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but she could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on her. Back in her apartment, Sarah reviewed the photos and notes she had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the dark history of Grimsby Manor. As she finished, she felt a cold draft and heard Lord Grimsby's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." Sarah knew the haunting was far from over.
Lisa moves into her new apartment. The building is old but charming. As she unpacks, she finds a small, locked box in the back of a closet. Curious, she sets it aside to figure out how to open it later. That night, Lisa hears strange noises, whispers, and faint footsteps. She brushes it off as her imagination, but the noises persist, growing louder each night. She starts to feel uneasy. Unable to ignore the noises any longer, Lisa decides to focus on the box. She finds an old key hidden in the apartment and uses it to unlock the box. Inside, she discovers old photographs and a diary. Lisa reads the diary, which belonged to a woman named Margaret, who lived in the apartment years ago. The diary describes how Margaret was tormented by an unseen presence. Her final entry is a plea for help. Lisa begins to see strange things in mirrors, shadows moving, and a woman's face appearing briefly. One night, she sees Margaret's face clearly in the bathroom mirror, mouthing the words, "Help me." Frightened, Lisa seeks help from a local historian. He tells her about Margaret, who mysteriously disappeared. He believes Margaret's spirit is trapped and trying to communicate with Lisa, Determined to help Margaret, Lisa sets up a small shrine with candles and the photographs. She reads a passage from the diary aloud, asking Margaret to show her how to help. The room grows cold, and Margaret's ghost appears. Margaret's ghost leads Lisa to a hidden compartment in the floor. Inside, Lisa finds Margaret's skeletal remains. She calls the police, and they properly lay Margaret to rest. The haunting finally stops. With Margaret's remains found and given a proper burial, the apartment feels lighter. Lisa no longer hears the strange noises. She stands by the window, feeling at peace, knowing she helped Margaret find rest. Months later, a new tenant moves into the apartment. They find the diary Lisa left behind, with a note warning about the box. The apartment is now just a home, free from its dark past. In a quaint lakeside town, Sarah and Chris arrive at a secluded cabin for a weekend getaway. The air is crisp, and the lake shimmers in the sunlight. Excited for a peaceful retreat, they unload their bags and set foot into the cabin. As Sarah and Chris settle into the cabin, they notice strange occurrences: a flickering light, doors creaking on their own. Sarah brushes it off as quirks of an old cabin, but Chris grows increasingly uneasy. Something feels off about the place. Curiosity gets the best of them, and Sarah and Chris decide to explore the surrounding woods. The trees seem to whisper secrets as they wander deeper into the forest. The atmosphere grows thick with tension, and Sarah can't shake the feeling they're being watched. Lost in the woods, Sarah and Chris stumble upon an abandoned shack. It's dilapidated, covered in moss and ivy. Despite Chris's protests, Sarah insists on investigating. Inside, they find cryptic symbols scrawled on the walls. As night falls, Sarah is plagued by vivid nightmares, a ghostly figure beckoning from the darkness, whispering cryptic warnings. She wakes in a cold sweat, shaken to her core. Chris tries to comfort her, but the feeling of dread lingers. Desperate for answers, Sarah and Chris return to the lake. The water is still and murky, reflecting the night sky like a black mirror. Sarah feels a chill run down her spine as she stares into its depths, sensing an ancient presence lurking beneath the surface. In a moment of recklessness, Sarah decides to confront the entity haunting them. She ventures into the woods alone, following the whispers that lead her deeper into the darkness. Chris follows, desperate to protect her from whatever lurks within. In the heart of the forest, Sarah and Chris come face to face with the source of the haunting, a restless spirit trapped in Willow Lake for centuries. It pleads for release, its voice echoing through the trees. Sarah and Chris realize they must help the spirit find peace before it's too late. With a heavy heart, Sarah and Chris perform a ritual to release the spirit from its earthly bonds. The air crackles with magic as they recite ancient incantations, channeling their energy into the lake. As the last words are spoken, a blinding light fills the forest, and the spirit ascends, finally finding peace. As dawn breaks over Willow Lake, Sarah and Chris emerge from the forest, weary but victorious. The haunted whispers have faded, replaced by the soothing sounds of nature. They share a knowing glance, grateful for the bond that brought them through the darkness.
A car winds its way through the thick fog, approaching the small town of Willow Creek. Inside are four friends, eager for a weekend of camping and adventure. As they reach the outskirts of town, they pass an old abandoned mansion shrouded in mist. A sense of unease settles over them, but they push it aside, eager to reach their destination. The friends arrive at their campsite by Willow Creek, surrounded by towering trees and the gentle babble of the water. They set up their tents and gather around a crackling fire, swapping stories and roasting marshmallows. But as darkness falls, the woods seem to come alive with strange sounds, and a feeling of being watched settles over the group. As they explore the woods, the friends stumble upon an old, dilapidated cabin hidden among the trees. Intrigued, they cautiously approach, the air thick with a sense of foreboding. Inside, they find decaying furniture and strange symbols carved into the walls. Suddenly, they hear a noise from the darkness, a low, guttural growl that freezes them in their tracks. Driven by curiosity, the friends decide to investigate the abandoned mansion they passed earlier. As they approach, they're struck by its imposing presence, the windows boarded up, the walls covered in ivy. They push open the creaking door and step inside, the air heavy with the weight of forgotten memories. Inside the mansion, the friends are overcome by a sense of dread. Shadows dance in the corners of their vision, and cold spots chill them to the bone. They hear whispers in the darkness, urging them to leave, but they press on, determined to uncover the secrets hidden within the mansion's walls. As they delve deeper into the mansion, the friends encounter increasingly sinister phenomena. Objects move on their own, disembodied voices echo through the halls, and ghostly apparitions materialize before their eyes. Fear grips them, threatening to tear apart their sanity as they struggle to make sense of the horrors unfolding around them. With the mansion's malevolent presence closing in around them, the friends make a desperate bid for escape. They run through the twisting corridors, pursued by unseen forces that threaten to consume them whole. As they burst through the front door, gasping for breath, they realize they've escaped with their lives. But the horrors they've witnessed will haunt them forever. Blackwood House stood isolated in the dense forest. Its windows were broken and the walls were cracked. As dusk set in, the sky turned an eerie orange and purple, casting a sinister glow on the decaying structure. Inside the house, the foyer was dark and filled with dust and cobwebs. An old creaky staircase led up to the second floor, and a broken chandelier hung from the ceiling, its crystals missing or shattered. The living room was filled with tattered furniture and a cold fireplace. A broken window let in a sliver of moonlight, illuminating the peeling wallpaper and the thick layer of dust that covered everything. The kitchen was a mess of broken cabinets and rusty appliances. A large wooden table in the center was covered in dust and cobwebs, and an old broken stove stood in the corner, untouched for years. The dining room featured a long table with an old tattered tablecloth. The chairs were scattered and overturned, and a single dusty candle sat at the center of the table, unlit and forgotten. The hallway was long and dark, with old creaky floorboards and faded wallpaper. Closed doors lined the hallway, each marked with a different ominous symbol, hinting at the secrets hidden within. The bedroom was dusty and old, with a large canopy bed covered in cobwebs. The curtains were tattered, and moonlight streamed in through a cracked window, casting eerie shadows on the floor. The attic was filled with old, forgotten items covered in dust and cobwebs. A single small window let in a beam of moonlight, illuminating strange old toys scattered on the floor. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. The basement was dark and damp, with stone walls and a dirt floor. Old rusty chains hung from the ceiling, and the air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. The sense of dread was palpable, as if the walls themselves whispered secrets. As dawn broke, Blackwood House was bathed in a soft golden light. The forest around it remained dark, but the first rays of the sun illuminated the decaying structure. The night's terror faded, but the house's haunting presence remained, a testament to its cursed history. As the sun sets, casting a crimson glow over the horizon, an imposing mansion stands silent and forsaken. Its once grand facade now weathered and covered in ivy, the mansion casts eerie shadows across the overgrown lawn, hinting at the secrets it holds within. In the neglected garden surrounding the mansion, tangled bushes and wilted flowers paint a haunting picture. Moonlight filters through the twisted branches of the trees, casting an ethereal glow upon patches of the eerie landscape, where shadows seem to dance in silent reverie. On the grand front porch of the mansion, once a beacon of opulence, now lies cracked and crumbling under the weight of time. Moonlight casts long shadows across the faded steps, adding to the sense of abandonment that permeates the air. Within the mansion's foyer, the dim light of dusty chandeliers flickers weakly, casting eerie shadows upon the tattered wallpaper. Moonlight filters through broken windows, illuminating cobweb-covered furniture that sits frozen in time, a silent witness to the mansion's descent into decay. In the cavernous ballroom of the mansion, the once glamorous dance floor now rots beneath neglect. Faded tapestries hang from the walls like forgotten memories, while moonlight streams through cracked skylights, casting ghostly patterns upon the abandoned space, as if the echoes of bygone celebrations still linger in the air. Within the mansion's library, the scent of dust hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the musty aroma of aging books. Tattered armchairs sit among shelves of ancient tomes, while moonlight filters through stained glass windows, casting colorful shadows upon the worn carpet that bears the weight of forgotten knowledge. In the dilapidated dining hall of the mansion, a long table lies buried beneath layers of cobwebs and neglect. Overturned chairs litter the floor, while moonlight streams through broken windows, casting an ethereal glow upon the decaying scene, where echoes of feasts long past still resonate in the silent air. Within the mansion's study, dusty bookshelves groan under the weight of forgotten knowledge, while forgotten artifacts gather dust in every corner. Moonlight filters weakly through dusty windows, casting long shadows upon the stacks of papers and abandoned furniture that clutter the room, where the ghosts of scholarly pursuits still linger in the darkness. In a desolate bedroom of the mansion, the once grand bed frame now sags under the weight of time, its faded curtains hanging limply from rusted rods. Moonlight filters weakly through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows upon the peeling walls, where whispers of dreams long forgotten still echo in the silent night. As dawn breaks over this mansion's overgrown backyard, the soft light of morning bathes the decaying structures in an ethereal glow. Mist rises from the damp earth, shrouding the forgotten corners of the estate in a veil of mystery, where the spirits of the past find solace in the dawn of a new day.
Emily, Jake, and Sarah arrived at Blackwood Manor, an ancient, crumbling estate shrouded in mist. The manor had been abandoned for decades, and stories of its haunting were legendary. They were there to document the paranormal activity for their online show. "This place is seriously creepy," Sarah said, shivering as she stepped out of the car. "That's the point," Jake replied, setting up his camera. "The spookier, the better." Emily led the way up the overgrown path to the front door, her excitement mixed with unease. "Let's get inside and start setting up." Inside the manor, the air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. The grand hall was filled with old furniture, draped in white sheets. As they explored, they found evidence of the past: old portraits, tattered books, and broken artifacts. "Look at this," Sarah said, picking up an old locket. "It must have belonged to someone important." Jake filmed everything, capturing the unsettling atmosphere. "This is going to be great footage." Emily found an old diary on a dusty table. "This might tell us what happened here." Emily read aloud from the diary, which detailed the tragic story of the Blackwood family. They had practiced dark rituals, summoning spirits that ultimately led to their downfall. The diary ended abruptly, hinting at a terrible event. "This is so creepy," Sarah said, looking around nervously. "We need to document everything," Jake insisted. "This is gold." As Emily closed the diary, a sudden chill filled the room. The lights flickered, and they heard a distant whisper. "Did you hear that?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. A shadow moved across the hall, catching their attention. They followed it to a room at the end of the corridor. Inside, the temperature dropped dramatically, and they saw a figure standing by the window. "Who's there?" Jake called out, but there was no response. The figure turned slowly, revealing a face twisted with pain and anger. It lunged at them, and they ran, slamming the door behind them. "We need to get out of here," Sarah screamed. "Not yet," Emily said, her fear giving way to determination. "We have to finish what we started." Emily found instructions for a banishment ritual in the diary. They gathered candles, chalk, and other items needed for the ritual. The air was thick with tension as they worked quickly, knowing the spirit could return at any moment. "Are you sure this will work?" Jake asked, lighting the candles. "It has to," Emily replied, drawing a circle on the floor. "We don't have any other choice." Sarah stood guard, her eyes darting around the room. "Hurry up. I don't want to be here any longer than we have to." As they began the ritual, the spirit returned, more furious than before. It howled and thrashed against the invisible barrier created by the circle. Emily chanted the incantation from the diary, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Keep it away from us," Sarah yelled, clutching a candle. "We're almost there," Emily shouted back, her focus unwavering. The spirit's form began to waver and dissolve as the ritual reached its climax. With one final desperate scream, it vanished into thin air. The friends collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a peaceful silence. "We did it," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. Let's get out of here, Sarah urged, her eyes still wide with fear. They gathered their things and left the manor, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. As they walked away from Blackwood Manor, they felt a sense of triumph and relief. "Let's never do this again," Jake said, managing a weak smile. As they walked away from the manor, the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the forest. The manor behind them was now just a distant memory, a place they would never forget but never return to. "Let's make a pact," Emily said, stopping to look at her friends. "We never speak of this again." "Agreed," Jake and Sarah said in unison. They walked on, the past behind them and the future ahead, grateful to have survived the haunting of Blackwood Manor. On a cold, moonlit night, 4 friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lisa, stood at the gate of Blackwood Manor. The mansion was notorious for being haunted. They decided to enter, driven by curiosity and a dare. They pushed open the creaky front door and stepped inside. The foyer was dark and dusty, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. Old portraits stared at them from the walls. They moved into the living room, where a grand piano stood in one corner and a large, broken chandelier hung from the ceiling. Suddenly, the piano played a single, haunting note. Everyone froze in fear. Gathering their courage, they climbed the creaky staircase to the second floor. The hallway was long and dark, with several closed doors. They heard faint, eerie whispers, but couldn't tell where they were coming from. They opened one of the doors and found an old nursery. Dusty toys were scattered around, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing through the room. Panicked, they rushed downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even darker and colder. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls, and old furniture was strewn around. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. Her hollow eyes stared at them as she whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Blackwood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed never to speak of it again. It was a dreary afternoon when Sarah, Tom, and their teenage daughter, Lily, arrived at Eldridge Manor. The old, sprawling mansion stood ominously against the darkening sky, its windows like blank eyes staring back at them. The family had inherited the property from a distant relative, and despite its eerie appearance, they decided to give it a chance. "Wow, this place is huge!" Lily exclaimed, though her excitement was tempered by an uneasy feeling. Tom forced a smile. "Let's make it our home. It just needs a little work." Sarah glanced at the towering structure, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Let's get inside before it gets too dark." Inside, the manor was filled with antique furniture, dusty chandeliers, and creaking wooden floors. As they explored, they discovered a hidden staircase behind an old bookcase. Curiosity got the better of them, and they descended into a dimly lit basement. "This place is like a maze," Tom said, his voice echoing off the walls. Sarah found an old diary on a dusty table. "Look at this," she said, flipping through the pages. "It's from the 1800s. Lily, shining a flashlight around the room, gasped as she saw strange symbols carved into the walls. "What do these mean?" That night, as they settled into their new home, strange things began to happen. Lily's room was the coldest in the house, and she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Around midnight, she heard whispering voices and saw a shadow moving in the corner of her room. "Mom! Dad!" she screamed, running to their room. Tom and Sarah woke up startled. "What is it, Lily?" Tom asked. "There's something in my room. I heard voices and saw a shadow," Lily said, trembling. Sarah tried to comfort her. "It's just your imagination, honey. This place is old and creepy, but there's nothing to be afraid of." The next day, Sarah delved deeper into the old diary. It belonged to a woman named Eleanor Eldridge, who wrote about the strange occurrences in the manor and her experiments with the occult. She mentioned a mirror in the attic that was the source of the hauntings. "We need to find that mirror," Sarah said, showing the diary to Tom. Tom nodded. "Let's go to the attic." Together, they climbed the narrow staircase to the attic. Amidst the cobwebs and old trunks, they found the mirror covered with a dusty cloth. "This must be it," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. As they uncovered the mirror, a cold breeze swept through the attic. The mirror's surface was strangely clear, and as they looked into it, they saw faint images of people moving behind them, ghostly figures trapped within the glass. Sarah gasped. "This is it. This is what's causing everything." Tom placed a hand on her shoulder. "We need to destroy it." But before they could act, the mirror began to glow, and the room filled with an unearthly light. The figures in the mirror became more distinct, reaching out towards them. "We need to get out of here," Tom shouted, pulling Sarah towards the stairs. That night, the hauntings intensified. Doors slammed shut on their own, footsteps echoed in empty hallways, and ghostly apparitions appeared throughout the house. The family realized they had to find a way to end the hauntings for good. "We need to perform a ritual," Sarah said, showing them a passage from the diary. "It's the only way to banish the spirits." Tom gathered the necessary items: candles, salt, and a ceremonial dagger. "Let's do this. We have no other choice." They set up the ritual in the basement, forming a circle with the salt and placing the mirror in the center. The family began the ritual, chanting the incantations from the diary. As they did, the temperature in the room dropped, and the ghostly figures from the mirror began to emerge, swirling around them. "Keep going," Sarah urged, her voice shaking. Tom held the dagger steady, ready for the final part of the ritual. "We're almost there." Lily, clutching her mother's hand, watched in terror as the spirits drew closer, their faces contorted with rage and sorrow. As Tom raised the dagger to complete the ritual, a powerful force knocked him to the ground. The mirror glowed brighter, and a deafening roar filled the room. "No, we can't stop now!" Sarah shouted, helping Tom up. With renewed determination, Tom plunged the dagger into the mirror. The glass shattered, releasing a blinding light and a wave of cold air that knocked them all back. The spirits screamed and dissipated, leaving the room in silence. The temperature began to rise, and the oppressive feeling lifted. "It's over," Tom said, breathing heavily. The next morning, the manor felt different. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and the oppressive atmosphere was gone. The family began packing their things, eager to leave the haunted house behind. "We did it," Lily said, smiling for the first time in days. Sarah nodded. "Let's never speak of this place again." Tom agreed. "We need to move on with our lives." As they drove away from Eldridge Manor, the weight of the past days lifted, and they felt hopeful for the future. Back home, life seemed to return to normal. However, one night, Sarah found a piece of the shattered mirror in her bag. She stared at it, her heart pounding. Suddenly, she heard a familiar whisper and saw a shadow move across the room. "Tom, it's not over," she whispered, feeling a chill run down her spine. As the shadow loomed larger, the whisper grew louder, and Sarah realized with horror that the spirits had followed them home.
Asterisk. It was a dark and stormy night. Sarah and her friends, Mike and Lucy, decided to take a shortcut through the old haunted woods to get home faster. They had heard the stories about the woods, but they didn't believe in ghosts. Asterisk, asterisk. As they entered the woods, the wind howled through the trees, and shadows danced in the dim light of their flashlights. The path was narrow and overgrown, making it difficult to walk. Suddenly, they heard a strange noise coming from the darkness. It sounded like whispering, but they couldn't understand the words. Sarah suggested they keep moving, but Mike wanted to check it out. They came across an old abandoned cabin. The windows were broken, and the door hung loosely on its hinges. Lucy felt a chill run down her spine as they approached it. Inside the cabin, the air was cold and damp. Cobwebs covered the corners, and the floor creaked with every step. They found old furniture and strange symbols carved into the walls. Just as they were about to leave, a ghostly apparition appeared in front of them. It was a woman dressed in old-fashioned clothes with a sorrowful expression. She whispered, "Leave this place." Just as they were about to leave, a ghostly apparition appeared in front of them. It was a woman dressed in old-fashioned clothes with a sorrowful expression. She whispered, "Leave this place." Terrified, they ran out of the cabin and back into the woods. The ghostly woman seemed to follow them, her whispers growing louder and more desperate. They could feel her cold presence right behind them. In their panic, they lost the path and found themselves deeper in the woods. The trees seemed to close in on them, and the whispers of the ghostly woman echoed around them. Just when they thought they were lost forever, they saw a faint light in the distance. They followed it and found themselves at the edge of the woods, the ghostly whispers fading away. They finally made it out of the woods, panting and scared, but safe. They vowed never to take that shortcut again and hurried home, the haunting experience etched in their memories forever. A car winds its way down a narrow road, flanked on both sides by dense forest. Inside, a group of friends chats excitedly, their anticipation palpable as they approach their destination, a secluded cabin deep in the heart of the Whispering Woods. As they round a bend in the road, the cabin comes into view, its weathered facade blending seamlessly with the surrounding trees. The friends step out of the car and approach the cabin, their footsteps muffled by the thick layer of pine needles covering the ground. The air is cool and crisp, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. They unlock the door and step inside, their excitement mounting as they take in their surroundings. The cozy fireplace, the rustic furniture, the promise of a weekend filled with laughter and adventure. The next day, the friends set out on a hike through the Whispering Woods, eager to explore their surroundings. They follow a narrow trail that winds its way through the dense forest, the canopy overhead casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. As they walk, they hear the faint sound of whispering in the distance, but they dismiss it as nothing more than the wind rustling through the trees. As they hike deeper into the woods, the friends stumble upon an abandoned clearing, a forgotten relic of a bygone era. The grass is overgrown, and the remains of a crumbling stone structure lie scattered among the trees. A sense of unease washes over them as they enter the clearing, the whispering growing louder with each step they take. As they explore the clearing, the friends are overcome by a sense of foreboding, the whispering growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. They exchange nervous glances, their hearts pounding in their chests as they try to locate the source of the strange noises. But the forest remains silent, its secrets hidden beneath a shroud of darkness. Suddenly, one of the friends disappears without a trace, leaving the others panicked and confused. They call out into the darkness, their voices echoing through the trees, but there's no response. Frantic, they search the clearing, their fear mounting with each passing moment. But the forest remains silent, as if swallowing their cries for help. As night falls, the friends begin to unravel, their minds tormented by the whispers that fill the air. They argue and accuse one another, their once strong bonds strained to the breaking point. But as they spiral further into madness, they realize they must confront the darkness that lurks within the Whispering Woods if they have any hope of escaping its grasp. Armed with determination, the remaining friends set out to confront the evil that haunts the Whispering Woods once and for all. They gather in the clearing, their hearts pounding in their chests as they prepare to face their greatest fears. With a final glance at one another, they steel themselves for the battle ahead. As dawn breaks, the remaining friends emerge from the Whispering Woods, battered and bruised but alive. They exchange weary smiles, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the scars of their ordeal will never fully heal, they take solace in the knowledge that they've conquered the darkness that once threatened to consume them.
Lily moves into a small apartment in an old building. It's her first time living alone, and she's excited. As she unpacks, she finds an old, ornate key hidden in a drawer. Curious, she sets it aside, thinking it might open a secret compartment somewhere in the apartment. That night, as Lily is about to fall asleep, she hears faint whispers and soft footsteps. She dismisses it as noise from her neighbors. However, the noises persist, growing louder and more distinct each night. Determined to find the source of the noises, Lily starts searching the apartment. She discovers a small hidden door behind a large cabinet. The old key fits perfectly, and she opens the door to reveal a dusty, forgotten room filled with old furniture and a large, cracked mirror. Lily cleans the mirror, hoping it might give a clue about the room's history. As she wipes away the dust, she sees a shadowy figure move behind her in the reflection. She turns around quickly, but the room is empty. Among the old furniture, Lily finds a dusty diary. It belonged to a woman named Eleanor, who lived in the apartment long ago. The diary details Eleanor's descent into madness, tormented by unseen forces. Her last entry is a plea for help, fearing she would be taken by the spirits. That night, Lily sees Eleanor's ghost in the mirror, mouthing the words, "Help me." Terrified, Lily backs away, but the ghost steps out of the mirror, reaching out to her. The air grows cold, and the room is filled with Eleanor's anguished cries. Panicked, Lily contacts a local paranormal investigator. The investigator tells her that Eleanor's spirit is trapped and needs to be freed to find peace. They prepare to perform a ritual to release Eleanor's spirit. Lily and the investigator set up candles around the mirror and read from Eleanor's diary. The room grows colder, and Eleanor's ghost appears. As they complete the ritual, Eleanor's ghost slowly fades, mouthing, "Thank you." With the ritual complete, the apartment feels lighter. The strange noises stop, and Lily finally feels at peace. She decides to keep the mirror as a reminder of Eleanor and the mystery she helped solve. Months later, Lily enjoys her now peaceful home. She often thinks about Eleanor and is grateful for the experience that brought her a deeper understanding of the past. Life returns to normal, but she never forgets the ghostly presence that once haunted her home.